Hello and welcome to Heal with the Real. Heal with the Real is a podcast where we invite survivors to thrivers of domestic abuse, and the conversation is around domestic and narcissistic abuse. And today's guest, she's come on for part two. So part one, if you didn't watch it, was an incredible episode all about red flags, and my guest Maria has written and published her own book around 50 red flags. Now, our conversation flowed that much last week. We only got to, I think it was the 19th red flag.
It was 19, yeah, it was, because I've done the book in 3 chunks, so we decided let's do that as one chunk. This will be chunk 2, and then the next one will be chunk 3. We can't get it all into one. It's too much.
We had a lot to talk about as well, and the conversation was great. So we decided to put it into 3 episodes just so that we could fit them all in. And I do heal with the real because of my book, Fix Your Future, which I published in July 2021. And in the back of Fix Your Future is all the healing techniques that I personally use to heal from domestic and narcissistic abuse. So, Maria, do you want to just do a little bit of an intro again, just to let everybody know who you are?
I can do that very quickly for you. Absolutely, Amanda. And thank you again for inviting me to come along and talk to you on your lovely podcast about these very, very important issues. So yes, my name is Maria McMahon. I'm a certified clinical NLP hypnotherapist. That's kind of what I go as, although I do a lot more. I do inner child healing, spiritual healing, all that sort of stuff. So I do a lot of that. And I've been working specifically with narcissistic abuse recovery for the past 7 years, I think it is now. And I wrote this book that we're going to talk about a bit more today. I think you said if I hold it still here, people can see it. Yeah, there we go. So it's the top 50 red flags of romantic predators, because when I started, I researched a lot when I first got into narcissistic abuse, and I became so fascinated with it. I decided to focus on it, set up my own support group. So I have a women-only support group. I have one for guys as well, because not a lot of people realize that guys actually get abused just as badly by female narcissists, and actually gay guys. I have gay guys in my group. They get abused by, obviously, gay narcissists. So narcissists are everywhere. So I set up the groups. I run the support groups. This is one of 2 books I've written. I have also written, not published. I haven't put it on Amazon, but it's a free book, and it's about my speedy trauma healing secrets. Oh, there you go. Which is just, it's my, my basic sort of 10 key steps that people need to think about right in the beginning when they're at the start of the journey, and some basic simple stuff to help them to start healing, because you've got to start somewhere, and it can be very, very difficult on your own. You need to connect with people who really understand what you're doing. So I always advise people who are struggling, trying to recover, to get into a support group, and make sure it's one that you feel safe in, that's not full of scammers, because an awful lot of them are. In fact, I know for a fact some of them have actually been set up by scammers, and just ridiculous. So find a good support group that is reliable. It's run by someone who is really bona fide and qualified, like yourself, Amanda, or like me, or like certain other people out there, and start doing what it takes to heal, because you can heal. It's absolutely possible. But during all my research, I kind of kept coming across these same flags again and again and again and again. And there wasn't, at the time that I knew of, and I read at least 100 books when I was in my initial journey of research, there wasn't one that literally said, look, these are the red flags, look out for this. Although there's plenty good books out there, and I can recommend plenty good ones. But there wasn't one that said, these are the red flags, look out for these things if you're on the dating scene, you're looking for romance, and you're just not sure. So that's how the 50 red flags of romantic predators was born. And the subtitle of that is How to Avoid the Narcissist Trap. So is that enough of a little quick intro to me?
That's a great intro. There's a couple of things I want to pick up on. First of all, when somebody comes into your group, what's the first thing that you support them with? Because I think that's for me, that's really important because I needed to practice a lot of self-love. When I first started my healing journey, self-love was the first part of that journey. So is it very common for a lot of survivors that are coming into your group? Where's the starting point, basically?
How I do it now is when they join, they have to answer some questions because I need to validate they're not scammers, and a lot of scammers try to get into these groups. So I have some questions there, like, what are you struggling with? And I also ask if they're interested in getting my free book that I've just mentioned, the one that's about healing. I also do, I have some really good free training on breaking the trauma bond, for example, on, healing codependency and things like that. So I also say, are you interested in any of these? And obviously, if they are, I generally will message them and say, okay, welcome, and all of that. And I will send them the book as a starting point and say, read this and get started, and then let's see where you are. And if you need, because not everyone who comes into me is trauma bonded. A lot of them are, but a lot of them aren't. A lot of them absolutely hate the bloody narcissist with a passion and never want to see them again, but they're dealing with a whole bunch of other issues. So the trauma bond isn't necessarily is going to be right for them. So it just depends on finding out where they are. And obviously in my group, I have a lot of blogs and a lot of posts and information, and it's like, where are you in the journey? And the book talks about that. You've got to figure out, where are you at the moment and where do you need to go? So it really depends where people are, because if you are very, very new to it and you don't know anything about, you've only literally just recently realized that you've been dealing with a narcissist, and oh my God, it's a real massive job to get your head around that, because you've been living with somebody, possibly married to them, whatever, that you thought was genuine, that loved you, that you absolutely love, and that you thought you had a whole future with, and suddenly that is like a shattered reality. And then you start realizing, when you start learning, and learning is one of my number one tips in that book, you've got to learn everything you can about it so that you can understand. Narcissistic personality disorder is a mental disorder. It's a thing. It's not your imagination. It's not you. You are not the narcissist. And all of these things have to be learned so you can start. So there's that. And then there's just, for a lot of people right in the beginning, there's just that absolute shock and horror. And they are not ready to even start the healing work. That won't come till much later, because you can't bulldoze healing into someone who hasn't processed through all these stages that you need to go through. So it's really important to be mindful of that. So that book is really kind of, well, start right at the beginning. Now, I might also get people who are very, very seasoned and kind of experts in I know everything about it. They know all the lingo. They know they had a narcissistic parent. They know they've attracted another narcissist because that, all of that. So they can be very well informed, but they're still struggling. And they might need helping with understanding codependency. They might need helping with healing trauma, which is, I did a masterclass. My aim is going to be going forward I'm doing another one this month. I'm going to be doing one probably every month on just different aspects, all related to the work I do to help people to heal, which is healing trauma, healing PTSD, breaking trauma bonds, and the big one, healing codependency, which is the most complicated because there are so many layers and nuances. Because you can be a very, very successful person, you can have a great business, you can be, really sort of professional, successful in lots of ways, but you can still be codependent. And a lot of people have this misconception that someone who's codependent is just like, needy and always people pleasing. People pleasing is a part of codependency. And a lot of people will say, oh my God, yeah, I know I'm a people pleaser. But it's digging under that. Why are you? And there's always reasons that go back to childhood and conditioning. And it's all about loss of self, loss of connection to yourself, your authentic self, because you weren't allowed to be yourself growing up as a child. So that is massive, but that can show up in different ways. So I've worked with a lot of what we call now high functioning codependents. They are very successful. I've got a couple of guys I'm working with are like Fortune 500 company. They're at that level. And still they manage to get drawn into this toxic relationships. And they're like, but I'm really successful and I'm well off and all of this. And they're kind of really confused. So There's a lot of education that needs to go on there. So the healing codependency is my longest. I have a 12-week course all to do with healing codependency, going through different stages. Because as I said, if you're right at the beginning and you're just coming to know what it is and understand it, you can't jump straight into deep trauma healing. So it's kind of a pathway. So it's really about, tuning in with people, finding where they're at and doing the best I can to help guide them. Well, this would be a good next step for you, kind of thing. Yeah.
You mentioned trauma bonds.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what is a trauma bond? And secondly, how you become trauma bonded?
Well, trauma bonding is when you become pretty much addicted to someone. And what happens and I do talk about it in the book, what happens when you meet a narcissist, and we're going to talk about romantic trauma bonding now, because those are the most common and they are typically the most painful for people. But it is possible to be trauma bonded to a family member, to somebody else. I worked with one lady who was happily married. She really was happily married. She had a couple of kids, and she became more than friends in terms of not a sexual relationship, but she became very friendly with the guy that she worked with, because she just found him interesting and, ironically, compassionate and fascinating. But she had no sexual designs on him. She wasn't unfaithful to her husband ever. And she became deeply trauma bonded to this guy. And she came to me and she said, I cannot understand what is going on here. Why can I not just walk away from this man? I know he's toxic and I'm not in love with him. Like, I don't want to be with him. I don't want to, sleep with him or any of that. So it can show up in a really complicated way like that. So we had to do some work to help her to break it. And she, still to this day, she definitely got over him because we did the work. But she's still she still says to me from time to time when she's in touch, I still can't believe that could have happened. So what happens is let's go back to the romantic one, because typically when you start with a narcissist, they love bomb you. They love bomb the heck out of you. And when somebody is all over you and like, wow, you're so fabulous, and I've never felt this way about anyone else, that's a massive ego boost, but it makes you feel so good. So your oxytocin and your dopamine and all your feel-good happy chemicals start firing, and you really go for that feeling because it's such a good feeling. And most of us know, I hope, what it's like to fall in love and how you're just awash with, it's just glorious. So that happens when you fall in love with this person, or who you think is a genuine person, and then they start devaluing you. So straight away, and there's no reason for it that you can understand, but straight away, what happens here is you go into the cognitive dissonance, although you don't even realize, you don't even know what cognitive dissonance is. So, and these are actually flags that I talk about in the third chunk, because that's when the real deep damage starts to show up. But as you've asked, we can cover it now. So you've got this lovely, gorgeous feeling, everything is fantastic, and then you're in cognitive dissonance, because why all of a sudden is this person, he or she, being so mean and nasty to me? Then you start pretty much what I've heard a great expression the other day, and I have used it in my book, gaslighting yourself. Well, maybe it's something I did wrong. So you start doubting yourself. Right early on, this can happen. Well, it was so great a few weeks ago, I must have done something to upset him or her. So you're racking your brains thinking, and then they'll come back and love bomb you again. So you're like, oh, so it's back. It's fantastic. Yes, he does love me. When I say he or she loves me, oh, everything is great. And you feel fantastic again. So you've got that lovely rush of, and it's just like being an addict and you're craving the alcohol or you're craving the drug, and you've got to have a hit even though you don't want it. And this is how it will progress with the trauma bonding, because you'll come to realize over time with this constant push-pull that you can't sustain it, but you are trauma bonded because you want that fix. You need that gorgeous feeling, that fix. So when they're nasty to you, you're going to put up with it, because walking away is too hard. And when you do walk away, you're craving them, because your body, it's a chemical reaction in your brain. You've literally become addicted to the dopamine and the fix you get with that person. Excuse me. So that's trauma bonding in a very, very brief nutshell. And it is complicated. And, you know, brain science has shown us that this is what's happening. There's chemical things going on in your brain. Harder for you to just walk away from it, just like an addict. They know they shouldn't drink alcohol because they know it's toxic and poisonous to them and makes them feel terrible, but they can't resist it, and they have to fight really hard and go into, you know, a 12-step program, detox, rehab, whatever, to break it. So it can feel very similar to a person trying to break the trauma bond. And what's absolutely staggeringly amazing to me is that I have worked with people to help them break that trauma bond in one session. And you think, how is that possible if you are chemically addicted? Your brain is. And the reason it's possible is because there's two things that go on when I do rapid healing, my speedy trauma healing with people. One part of it is cognitive. So we're either going to work cognitively with what's going on up here in your head, or we're going to work somatically. And they can be kind of interchangeable. You can do one and it will affect the other, or you can do, you know, the one here and it will affect here. You've got bottom up, which comes from the body, comes from the emotional. You've got top down, which comes from the, you know, the top part, from the cognitive part. And I did. So what's happening is your brain is processing memories and feelings. So you're either processing it in the brain from a memory that you call up in your mind. So I can say to you, think of a horrible time, a horrible thing that happened to you, just very, very quickly. Let's just do it very quickly. Think of a very horrible thing. Can you think of something? Don't have to tell me a thing about it. This is another great magic thing about this.
Yeah.
You don't even have to tell me a thing about it. So you can think of something really horrible that happened. Okay. Let's do a little quick breaking of a little, whether it's a trauma bond or a nasty memory, a flashback, the process is very, very much the same. Okay, so that memory, when it comes up for you, is it in your head as like a movie, as a picture? How do you remember it?
It is very much like a movie.
It's a movie. Perfect. That's one of my favorite things to work with. So this is cognitive. So when you think about that memory, because we have to gauge it, we have to calibrate where you are emotionally when you think about it. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being horrible, where would you rank it?
10.
It's a 10. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. But you seem quite calm, because quite often when people are at that level, they are showing me signs of anxiety, but you're seeming very, very, very calm.
I think it's because I've processed all my things.
Okay, but still, I understand that. So you've got very, very good nervous system regulation skills. You've obviously worked a lot on that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people I work with haven't. I teach them how to do that, but it makes it much easier when you're not dealing with this memory that the minute you think of it. You know, I worked with a lady in a masterclass recently. 3 years she'd been carrying around this memory that's affecting everything for her. Anyway, let's come back to you and your horrible memory. But even when you think about it now, you say, even though you're very calm and your nervous system is regulated, you say it's still a 10. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it didn't just affect me; it affected a family member as well.
Right. Okay. So when you think about it, you just feel horrible. Where do you feel? Do you feel that anywhere in your body?
I feel more sadness than anything.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's fine, but it's a 10 and it's a sadness. All right. So we want to change that for you, because holding that memory in your mind and feeling that sadness and having that 10 isn't helping you, and it isn't helping the family member. Okay. It isn't doing you any good at all. So you see, we're going to do a really quick version now of this, which is not the full version, but because we haven't even started talking about the red flags, not really. But anyway, let's try a very quick version. So you've got that movie. It's in black and white, is it, or in color?
Color.
It's in color. Okay. Is it inside your head or out in front of you?
In front of me.
It's in front of you. How close to you is it, or how far away?
Probably just over the road. You know, I can see it
It's over the road. So you've actually distanced yourself from it already quite a lot, which tells me a lot, because that tells me why you are not going into so much of a trauma response or anxious about it, because you have actually already distanced it from yourself, which is fantastic. Okay, but let's play around with this a bit more. Okay, so I want you to take that image that's over the road, and I want you to put it up on a big screen. Imagine there's a huge big scene, like a big rock concert stage in front of you, but it's this cinema screen on it. Yeah. You're going to put that whole scene on there, right? And what I want you to do is just quickly play that whole movie from where it started to where it ended. Whatever happened at the beginning, and like I say, you don't need to tell me anything about it. You're going to whip it through and stop it at the end and freeze it. Tell me when you get there.
Okay.
Okay, you got there? Excellent. Now what you're going to do, imagine you and I are here and we've got access to all kinds of magical tools, and we're going to play around with this. So the first thing you're going to do with it is you're going to change it from color to black and white. So you're going to just imagine you can just tap a little button and it's going to be in black and white. Now what you're going to do is you're going to rewind it as fast as you possibly can back to the beginning. Go. Tell me when you're back at the beginning.
Yeah.
Excellent. That was super quick. Now you're going to hit the fast forward. And this time you're going to whip it through to the end again, super fast, still in black and white to the end. Go.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take all your wisdom and knowledge, and the knowledge that it's not helping you to keep it. You don't want it. You want to get rid of it. You don't want it in your life anymore. You're going to take all that knowledge. You're going to float all that knowledge in. Not yet. You're just going to hang on. But you're also going to do something else. I want you to think of a piece of music that is really makes you feel happy, makes you want to dance, makes you just feel joy. Think of a piece of music. You got it?
Yeah.
Excellent. So now what you're going to do in a moment, not just yet, but in a moment, you're going to float all that knowledge that you have, all that wisdom that wants you to just let go of all that awful memory and everything connected with it, because you don't need to carry it anymore. You're going to float that knowledge in. You are going to hit rewind in a moment. You're going to rewind it in black and white, and you're going to play that soundtrack as loud as possible over that movie. Go. And rewind it back to the beginning. See, you jig along to the music. That's fine. Do that. Yeah, you're jigging along to it.
I'm jigging away. I'm jigging away.
Excellent. Okay.
Okay.
Right. Now, one more time. Fast forward to the end. Super fast. Hit once and it goes to the end. Yeah. Good girl. I see you playing your music. Right. This time, what you're going to do, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to rewind it super fast with that music playing loud. But when you rewind it this time, you're going to see the screen is kind of all gray and fuzzy. You can't make out an image. It's just like, you know, gray static on the screen. You're going to do that now. Go back to the beginning. Okay. Yeah. Fantastic. Now this time, one more time, whip it to the end. Whip it, whip to the end.
Yeah.
And now what you're going to do is you're going to blank the screen out. It's just a complete white screen. Okay. And now what I want you to do is call up an image of yourself, a picture of you, a time that you remember when you felt absolutely fantastic, joyful. The world was a fantastic place to be. It can be now, it can be in the future, it can be a past memory. Put yourself up on that screen looking absolutely fabulous.
Okay.
And put your music on in the background. You're just going to dance around. You're going to shake it out on that screen. Okay. Yeah, loving it. See, look at that happy face. Now what you're going to do is you're going to put your hands up like this. You're going to reach your hands out. You're going to grab that gorgeous woman off the screen. You're going to pull her over and you're going to slam her right in there. Ooh. And you're going to give her a nice big hug. Lovely, jubbly. Okay, good job. Now we're just going to forget about all that. We're going to talk about something completely different. And seeing your background has just reminded me that I still haven't done mine. And I've got to measure my what's it so that I get it. My head's not in the wrong place. You've got yours perfect because you've got your logo and that at the side. You've got that on top of your head. So I've got to do that. Okay. And that was just a little distraction there, which we always do as well. Right. So now you're going to think about the memory again and tell me how it feels now. What would you rank it as now when you just think about it first and tell me what happens?
Yeah, probably halved it.
Okay.
Probably halved it, I
You've
would
gone
say.
from 5 down to when you think of the actual memory, the image that we started with, where is that now?
Yeah, I mean, I can still see it. I don't know whether that's because of the situation that we're in right now. I can still see it very faintly.
So it's fainter, it's more faint than it was.
Yeah.
And is it still in the same position, like over the road, or where else? Where is it now?
Yeah, it's probably further away. Yeah, it feels like it's further away.
It feels like it's further away. Okay, so you've pushed it further. Now we won't do it now, but if we were working together and that was the result that came up, we would go back and we would work on it much more intensely. But
okay.
That has only taken us, what, about 4 minutes to do that.
Okay. And can I ask you, so if somebody comes to you for therapy, is there a set amount of, would you give somebody 12 sessions per se, or is it dependent on how much work they need?
That's a really good
would you
question,
normally
and
offer?
it is dependent on how much work I feel they need based on. I always do, like I say, a 30-minute free consultation, but it always ends up being 60 minutes. What I offer is I have a 30-day package where I start with a 2.5-hour breakthrough, which is a very deep relaxation, deep spiritual, connecting to self. It's a lot of intensive work we do in that. That is the first one. And then I would do 3 or 4 sessions with them one-on-one after that. That's my 30-day package. But I also now have a 12-week healing codependency, because that is, as I said, there's a lot more nuance and layers and stuff to learn on that. And you can't just say, right, you're codependent one day and you're not the next. You need to really understand how those codependent behaviors and thoughts and beliefs were programmed into you. And it takes time to process that and work through all these different stages. So I do have a 12-week course, which I do one-to-one, or I'm also now I've just literally started my first group program for that. And with that one, we do 12 weeks group program. And depending on whether you just want to do, because obviously you get access to all the pre-recorded material and stuff that I've done. So there's 12 weeks of that. And you get a weekly group coaching. So that would be the basic package. But then some people want to work with me one-on-one as well. So we do that, but we also do a number of one-on-one sessions. Yeah, so there's a lot of variety. But coming back to the trauma bond, we can break the trauma bond using a process like what I've just done with you. Because what happens is when you think about what was happening, your brain has to access that information for you. Yeah. Now, so it's accessing that particular memory. But if you change that memory and then you try and think of it again, it's not the same anymore. So you give your system a little bit of and I see shock on people's faces when they try to get the memory back. And they're like, oh, it's there, but it's
faint.
And they're baffled that they can't get it. And I'm like, they're like, yeah, it's still there. So then I'll ask them a bit more deep questioning. Well, if it's still, and we find out it's actually not the same. It's not in the same place, or it's completely gone. And we can, there's a lot more, fun stuff we can do around that. And it completely disconnects, because in order for your brain to access the trauma in your body, it has to think about or feel. Because the other way I do a process like that is if somebody is not particularly visual, which can happen. We tend to be very visual or very kinesthetic, which is more in the body. For somebody who's very kinesthetic, I would go straight into the emotions, and we're actually going to talk to the feelings in the body. And that is unbelievably powerful. You release the energy from your body and you can feel it. You can feel the difference. People say to me, that's unbelievable. And I have a real fun way of doing it. I'm like, don't worry about it. Let's just go along with this. Let's just play. And the reason it works because you are connected to your subconscious, you're actually connected to your higher self, and it loves all this work because you are energy. Your body is energy, your mind, everything is energy.
It's all one, isn't it? Often there's people that say that it's two different things, but actually I believe it's all one, and we're all connected through our mind and our body, and whatever affects that.
Yeah, we're all connected. Spiritual energy, we are all one. And you often hear, like, when people get enlightened and they have these profound experiences, I watch a lot of near-death experiences, and I've written 3 spiritual books about, higher level cosmology. I've co-authored 3. And they all say this, they get this feeling of oneness. They come to know we are one with God, all of us, everything, every person, everything on the planet, in the galaxy, we are all one. And it's about just tapping into that little part of, which is actually a massive part, and just opening that portal to, hang on, I'm much greater, more powerful than I ever realized. And that energy, when you start talking at that energy level, it's incredibly powerful, because it knows, it's like, hey, yay, this is who we're meant to be. This is great. Let's do it. Let's get rid of that toxic energy we don't need anymore.
Sure.
I did a session with a lady this morning. It was amazing. And she'd gone back to a childhood memory, very, very right back to the womb, which often happens when I do regression with people. And I don't say we're going to do regression, we're going to go back to the womb. I'm always guided by where the client's subconscious wants to take them. And it was straight back to the womb, and this baby was born. And she said it was amazing. She said it looks like all brown, like a little potato, and not happy. And it was carrying toxic energy from a past life, which might sound a bit woo-woo to people, but it really is not. And she called on all her spirit guides and angels to just suck all this, and this was her, not me, suck. And I said, how does she want that to happen? I don't say, well, do this and do that. I know when to let the person make the decision. And they sucked all this toxic energy out through the baby's belly button, which to me, actually, when you think about it, the umbilical cord and the connection there, it made perfect sense. I would never have thought to suggest that, but that was what this client came out with. I'm like, wow, fabulous, go with it, So they sucked all this, all her angel spirit guides sucked all this. She said, it's like horrible lime green toxic waste. That was her description, not mine. And I'm like, it's great. And then when that was done, she said, the baby looks pink now, pink and healthy and smiling. And she could feel the different energy. And this is all connected to childhood trauma. So energy work is absolutely amazing. It's completely illogical. There won't be any scientific basis for it, but absolutely it works. And spiritual energy is way ahead of science. Science just hasn't caught up there. It has caught up to a large degree with the brain and how the brain processes stuff. But you do that healing energy and the body feels it. And then your brain, when I say, okay, think about it now, your brain doesn't have that same memory anymore. It's not encoded the same way because you've changed it. It's fascinating. I absolutely love it.
If somebody, because do you deliver online mostly?
Only online, I don't do in person now.
If somebody's triggered, Maria, whilst you're having a session, what would you normally do in that situation? So if you're bringing up somebody's past, but they're hugely, like when you're asking me, what is it? Is it 1 to 10?
Mm-hmm.
But if they're massively triggered whilst you're with your client, what do you do in that situation?
Well, for one, I'm very clear with what's going on with them in the first place so that they don't get triggered per se. So we go into a very safe space where they can effectively disassociate from their body. So just as a brief, basic example of that, with you and the little piece of work we did right now, I made sure that you're over here with me with this fun gadgets we've got to make some changes, and we've pushed that. And your brain has to think about that. So if your brain's having to think about doing something else, it's very difficult for you to actually be in that. So it's a dissociation technique, not the same as dissociative identity or serious dissociation, but you're just disconnecting yourself from that. And it's like you're looking at you, and it makes it far less likely that that person will get triggered per se. But the interesting thing about that is that triggers, when you get triggered, is because there is unhealed trauma and unhealed wounds, and that could be going back to childhood trauma or whenever. And the whole object of doing this work that I do with people is to heal those root cause traumas so that they don't get triggered anymore. And if you heal the root cause, then they won't get trauma. They won't get triggered. They'll be like, yeah, okay, when I think about it now. Whereas they might have been going into a trauma response because they can. I mean, people cry all the time when I work with them, and I'm very comfortable to let people just cry. And this client this morning was in floods at times. I'm just like, it's okay. Just go with it. Just
let it go.
Let it go. Just don't be afraid of it, because there's power in just letting that pain come up. Let it come up. So when you do that, and it's like, yeah, it's okay. This isn't going to kill me, but now let's just deal with this in a different way. And I have a completely different process for healing that kind of trauma that's very, very empowering and completely changes how that person feels about the person it happened to when they were 3 years old or 10 years old or whatever. And it is amazing the difference it makes when you heal at that level. So then trigger's not a problem. But if somebody did, because when I first learned, it's called an abreaction, when you take someone into like a deep relaxation process and they, and I know exactly what it feels like, because interestingly, we were trained very carefully how not to make it happen. But when I did my training, I was invited, a number of us were invited back to be facilitators on the subsequent course that my trainer was running. So we're working with other people, and I was a guinea pig, for want of a better word, for one of the trainees. And it was quite interesting for me, because I understood exactly how the process felt. And she was talking me through the process, but she used the wrong wording. And you've got to be very careful about the wording you use to someone when they're in a state of hypnosis, because it's very literal. So we were dealing with a memory. She was trying to help me to, feel better about a traumatic memory. And I didn't have traumatic memories per se, but I came up with a memory of something that had happened with a very good friend of mine that really upset me. At the time it happened, I just was really shocked and really upset and really angry. And then she said, I think the wording was, what do you want to do now to make yourself feel better? Which, bless her heart, she just didn't have it the right way. But it absolutely opened the floodgates, because I burst out crying, and I'm sitting there like sobbing my heart out. And I knew she'd panic, but when you're in hypnosis like that, you know exactly what's going on. But I didn't care at this point. This was my stuff to deal with, and she could do her own thing. And I heard her looking around to find some of the more senior trainers. Oh my God, look, what's happening? What have I done? And I'm sitting here thinking, this is actually quite funny, because when that had happened to me, that particular time when I'd had this argument with my friend, I was so upset. The one thing I wanted to do in that moment, but didn't do, was just burst out crying. I just felt like crying. I was so upset. And that's what I wanted to do. And she literally triggered that response. And to me, that was fascinating, because I thought, that's amazing, because that shows you how your body stores trauma and memories. And what I wanted to do was cry. And I hadn't been able to. I just held it back, and I got over it and got on with my day, because we were professional colleagues at the time, and I had to get on with my day. And that was that. And so when I came, they brought me back, and I started laughing, and I just, got my hand on her. I said, listen, don't worry. I can explain to you exactly what happened there and exactly where you went wrong, but don't worry, it's okay. But it was valuable, because it could have been traumatic for them. But I know when I go in with a client, I know if they've had brutal childhood trauma. This person I worked with today was literally sexually abused as a 3-year-old child. And another member of her family witnessed it and just turned a blind eye. And both of those things collided for her. And so I know I'm dealing with hardcore trauma here. Yeah. But I know how to deal with it. I know how to deal with it. So I'm going in very, very well informed. And it is not going to kill you. It didn't kill you when it happened. It isn't going to kill you now, you know?
Absolutely.
So I'm very sure about how to work with a person when that happens. And I think they kind of know that. But I only ever do that with someone when I've worked with them a bit and I've built up a really strong sense of trust with that person, and they know they're in safe hands with me, you know. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. So let's get to the red flags, because
we've done.
How many is in phase 2, and can
Let's
we
have a
go,
quick,
and can we go through them?
We can whip through them because we've
really quickly, because we haven't got that much left. We haven't
I know.
That much
we totally don't. We totally went off piste there, didn't we?
Yeah.
Okay, so
let's stick to the red flags and let's do like really quickly.
We've got 20 to 26, so it's only 7. And these flags in this chunk, I call this getting deeper into relationships, because last week we talked about the early ones you're likely to spot right in the beginning.
Yeah.
This is when the cracks really begin to show. So number 20 is, and this, I've heard this a lot, you might think it's crazy, but they want to move in with you or marry you or get pregnant within a shockingly short space of time. So if you see that happening, run for the hills, don't fall for it. But of course, when you're in the love bomb stage and you're, oh my God, he's so in love with me, or she's so in love with me, he wants us to get married, he wants us to move in together, or she wants my baby, it's even more intoxicating. So you've got to be really careful on that. Red flag number 21, which is actually one of the core components of narcissistic personality disorder, is they have this really evident sense of entitlement and self-importance, which you are likely to see very, very much. You start to see that they are not all sweetness and light all the time. And that is something that shows up a lot. Number 22, they're hypersensitive to criticism, but on the flip side, they are very, very hypocritical. So they will be very, very critical about you. But if you say the slightest thing to them, it doesn't have to be even critical. You might say, oh, you know, I think the blue shirt would look better with that suit. They could fly into a complete, you know, frenzy, rage. How dare you say such a thing when you're just making a rational, you know, comment. But they can criticize you to the ends of the earth, and you're supposed to just suck it up, you know. Red flag number 23 is they are emotionally labile / volatile. So they are, 1 minute you get the love bombing, they can be super nice, then on a, you know, flick of a switch, and they can be completely toxic and nasty and vicious, and you just don't understand why. So their emotions are up and down all the time, which puts you, this is where the walking on eggshells come from. You never know what mood they're going to be in, how they're going to behave. It's just an awful way to live, because you're constantly on edge, which means your stress levels are very high. Your brain is constantly dishing out the cortisol, which is really bad for you. So that's that. Work matters, I've called this one. They do or they don't. And I'm sorry, my throat is still not quite right. I've still got this thing going on. Anyway, they do or they don't. So they might work and be very, very professional and successful and think they're the best thing since sliced bread in the company and no one's as good as them. So you might get a lot of the vanity coming in there. Or they might be absolutely bone idle, lazy, and can't keep a job, can't last a job for 5 minutes, constantly expecting you to do everything, you to be the breadwinner, all of that sort of stuff. So if you're seeing either of those extremes, huge red flag. Then we've got 25. Prince or pauper, they financially abuse you. And this can be devastating, and is devastating for a lot of people, because they, you know, I've known women who have left successful careers, given up their job when they married, because the narcissist said, I want you to be home to take care of our home and have our kids and build our family. And they've done that. So they are trapped, you know, being stay-at-home mom, whatever, or stay-at-home dad. I've heard of that too. And they haven't been allowed to kind of go and get a part-time job. So they become completely financially dependent on this partner, and they have no financial means of their own. So it's something I always advise anyone, do not ever become completely financially dependent on someone else, because there's a huge risk. I mean, You can in certain places, if you're happily married and you're married to a normal person, then of course you can give up work and spend a few years being a stay-at-home mum if that's what you both decide. But if you've seen these other red flags, and there are always, as I said last time, more than one. You're never going to see just one red flag. There's always going to be more than one. So watch out for that, because they may also be the other way around, that you're the breadwinner and they sponge off you, they spend all your money, they expect you to pay all the bills, and they contribute hardly anything. This happens way more often than you would realize as well. So that's really be careful on that. Make sure that there's a real even balance there. And number 6 is empty promises and future faking. And this you'll get, this comes in 2 forms. They might be sweet talking. You say, yes, we'll have that holiday in Barbados. Absolutely, 100%. We will have that fabulous holiday. And then when you try to get them to book it or to commit to actually making it happen, they'll come up excuses that in the beginning, they might say, oh, yeah, we'll get to it, whatever. Or, and I've heard this, and everything in this book is stuff I've heard from people I've worked with or have been in my groups. So none of this is like made up stuff.
Yeah.
They'll say, I never agreed to that. I never agreed to go on holiday to Barbados. You know, when did I say that? And they completely and utterly gaslight you. And you're thinking, what the heck, you know? But you did. Well, they're like, well, no, you must have misunderstood me. So you get gaslighted.
Yeah.
So, and they'll keep doing that and making promises and not delivering on them. So they're promising you a lovely holiday to Barbados or wherever in the future, and you're thinking, oh well, we're going to have that holiday, we can really like rekindle our feelings and everything will be great, but it never happens. And that's just one example. There will be dozens of them. So that's also really common. That's it for that chunk. Then next week we have got, oh, hang on, let me just check.
So we're at 27.
Right.
Is that 27 red flags?
No, there was 20, it was 20 to 26, so that's 7, isn't it?
Yeah.
Next time we might need to actually split that into 2 as well, because we've got red flags. This is red flags in the devaluing stage, and we've got 27 to 40. And let me just have a quick look at what we've got and see. Oh, hang on. Yeah, that's the devaluing state. Right, chapter 4. Yeah, it's the devaluing. That's the big chunk. And hold on a sec. Let me just think. Right, I made a mistake. It's actually there's chapter 4 and chapter 5. So the devaluing stage, which we can, if we don't digress in the beginning, we can certainly get through that. But then there is chapter 5, which is the big red flags of narcissistic abuse. And we've talked about 2 of them today inadvertently because of the questions that we got on with. Red flag 41 is cognitive dissonance, and red flag 43 is trauma bonding.
Yeah.
So we may have to do, I mean, we could really get through them very quickly, but I think it might be too much of just like a list if we do that. Well, it's up to you. We'll see. Let's see how we go. Because I'm happy if it takes 2 more, because I know we were going to do 1 more. If it takes 2 more, we can do 2 more.
Okay. Just really quickly, before we go, because there's going to definitely be a part 3 for this, and I can't thank you enough for coming on and
my pleasure,
letting the viewers know these signs of the red flags, because like you said right at the beginning of the podcast, it's so important to understand those red flags and do that learning at the beginning. You know, after you've found yourself away from this abusive relationship, just to make sense of it. The amygdala and the hippocampus. Can we just really quickly talk about those 2 things? Because does the amygdala, does that shrink from trauma?
There's a lot of evidence that shows the physical damage, literally, that your brain does shrink. There is absolute research that shows that as a result of trauma. But the good thing is that the brain, we now know neuroplasticity absolutely works. So if you work on healing and do meditation exercises and all kinds of different healing exercises, that you can repair the damage to your brain. There's a lot of research out there about that neuroplasticity absolutely works, and you can heal the damage. If it's emotional trauma, you can. But yeah. And there's a lot more. Obviously, the brain is the most complex organ we have, let's face it, and there's so many elements to it. And I do cover in the Healing Codependency course, I have a section on that, which is called Your Brain and Trauma, that talks about all the different areas of your brain and your central nervous system and the vagus nerve, and how it all kind of is impacting how you deal with trauma.
I mean, I find it fascinating, and I think that's a podcast all on its own, talking about the parts of the different parts of the brain that are affected by trauma. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, as always.
Another great episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's been great to talk to you again, Maria. Thank you so much.
I look forward to the next one.
Yes. We'll look forward to it. So next Wednesday, so it's the following Wednesday, which will be, is it the 7th? I will tell you, I can tell you, it will be the 6th. The 6th of March will be the next one.
Okay, but you'll send me your invite, won't you? And then that goes straight onto my calendar with all the relevant information.
I absolutely will.
All right.
Thank you so much. Any final words just before we go?
I would just say to anyone who's suffering, like I said in the early stages, get support, get a decent group that can help you. Connect with me if you want, come and join my group. But there is a lot of help to be had. You just got to reach out, and you're not alone. You don't have to be alone, and you absolutely can heal. Absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's that reaching out, isn't it? Often it'll stop, we feel the shame, the fear, or what will other people think. It doesn't matter what other people think. Just take that first step of reaching out.
Absolutely.
Important.
Absolutely.
Maria, thank you so much, and we'll see you next week for our 3rd episode. It's been amazing. It's been an absolute pleasure as usual.
Mine too. Thank you so much, Amanda. Thanks.